Imagine waking up, grabbing your phone, and immediately checking the markets, only to see everything at an all-time high. You feel a knot in your stomach. You think, I can't buy now, it's too expensive, I'll just wait for the dip. Does that sound familiar? It's a specific kind of financial anxiety that haunts so many of us in the US, the fear of being the sucker who bought right before the bubble burst. So let me ask you directly, are you waiting for the market to crash before you invest? Are you hoarding cash in a savings account, terrified of buying at the top? I get it, it feels safer. You want to protect that hard-earned money. But in his book, Just Keep Buying, data scientist Nick Maggiulli argues that this safety is actually an illusion.
Think of it this way. Imagine you're standing at a bus stop. You need to get to work, but you decide you're not going to get on the first bus that comes along because it looks a little crowded. You tell yourself, I'll wait for the perfect bus, the one that's completely empty and comfortable. So the first bus comes and goes. It's carrying passengers toward their destination. 10 minutes later, another bus comes. It's also imperfect, maybe a bit noisy, so you let that one pass too. You stand there for an hour, then two, waiting for this mythical perfect ride. Meanwhile, everyone else has already arrived at work, grabbed coffee, and started their day. You're still standing on the sidewalk, and now it's starting to rain.
This is exactly what happens when you sit in cash, waiting for a market crash that might be years away. You are standing at the financial bus stop, while the market, imperfect as it is, moves forward without you. Maggiulli's data shows that even if you had the worst timing imaginable, say you bought right before the Great Depression or the 2008 crash, if you just kept buying, you would still outperform the person who sat on the sidelines trying to time the perfect entry. It feels smart to wait. It feels prudent to hold on to your cash. But as we're about to see, it's actually the most expensive mistake you can make. In the next section, we're going to look at the hard numbers that prove why your timing matters far less than you think.
You are listening to The Last Read, Books for Your Ears, Wisdom for Your Life. If you want to ensure you stop missing out on these vital wealth-building secrets, take a second to hit that subscribe button now. Now, consider the anxiety we just talked about, the fear of the crash. What if I told you that buying at the absolute worst time is actually better than not buying at all? It sounds counterintuitive, perhaps even reckless. We are conditioned to believe that financial success relies on precision, on catching the wave at the exact right moment. But as it turns out, trying to time the market is a fool's game.
The book we are exploring today doesn't just claim this, it proves it. The author didn't rely on anecdotes or gut feelings from Wall Street gurus. He is a data scientist, someone who took over 100 years of market data, encompassing every boom, every bust, and every war, and he crunched those numbers to find the cold, hard truth.
He found that the math contradicts almost everything our intuition tells us about risk. Today, you aren't just going to learn a strategy. You are going to learn how to get rich without getting lucky. For those who want to see the charts and the raw data we are discussing, remember, the link of the book is in the description. But before we reveal the strategy that outperforms market timing, we need to meet the man who cracked the code. Who is this analyst telling us that our financial instincts are wrong? And why should we trust his algorithms over our own caution?
The man in question is Nick Maggiulli, and he is a bit of an anomaly in the world of personal finance. He isn't a brash TV personality shouting about the next hot stock pick, and he isn't selling a get-rich-quick seminar. He is a data scientist through and through. Nick serves as the Chief Operating Officer and Data Scientist at Ritholtz Wealth Management, a firm renowned for its evidence-based approach to the markets. But his real claim to fame, and the reason we are discussing his work today, comes from his blog of Dollars and Data. There is actually a brief story about his writing career that perfectly illustrates the philosophy of this book. Back in early 2017, Nick didn't set out to write a bestseller immediately. He simply made a commitment to publish one data-driven blog post every single week. He published on Tuesdays, regardless of how he felt, regardless of the market conditions, and he never stopped.
That relentless consistency, that mechanical approach to showing up, is the DNA of Just Keep Buying. You see, Nick's approach is unique because he doesn't rely on feel-good advice. He relies on cold, hard math. He doesn't care about what feels right. He cares about what the spreadsheets say is right. In the book, he takes conventional wisdom, the kind of stuff our parents taught us about money, and he puts it to the test against a century of economic data. And what he found is that a lot of what we consider prudent financial behavior is actually costing us money.
For example, think about the standard advice to be frugal. We are taught to clip coupons, to analyze our grocery bills, and to feel a pang of guilt every time we buy a morning coffee. We are told that the path to wealth is paved by cutting expenses. But Nick's algorithms revealed a different reality. He argues that for most people, stressing over the price of a latte is not just a waste of energy, it is a mathematical error. It turns out there is a fundamental flaw in trying to cut your way to wealth. You can only cut your expenses so much before you hit zero. You have to eat, after all. But there is another side of the equation, a variable with no limit that most people completely ignore until it is too late.
Your future income. Nick calls this concept human capital. And for anyone in their 20s or 30s, this, not your stock portfolio, is actually the biggest asset you own. Think about it this way. You can only cut your expenses so much. Even if you lived like a monk, ate rice and beans, and never left your house, there is a hard floor to how much you can save. You cannot spend less than zero. But your income, that has no ceiling. This brings us to one of the most provocative lines in the book. Saving is for the poor, investing is for the rich. Now, hold on, don't get offended. He isn't talking about your moral character. He is talking about your balance sheet.
When you are young or just starting out, what Nick defines mathematically as poor in terms of assets, your investment returns simply don't matter that much. If you have $1,000 invested and the market goes on a historic tear and returns 20%, congrats, you made $200. That won't change your life. But if you negotiate a $5,000 raise, that is 25 times more impactful than your investment return. That is why Nick says stressing over a $5 latte is a distraction. The person agonizing over their coffee budget is often ignoring the fact that they haven't asked for a raise in 3 years.
The mental model he offers is stark. You should focus 80% of your energy on increasing your income and only 20% on managing your investments, at least until your portfolio gets big enough that the math flips. So, if we aren't supposed to obsess over timing the market or cutting out every small joy, what are we supposed to do with the money we do save? Well, Nick proposes a strategy that is almost boring in its simplicity. It's a rule that takes the emotion completely out of the equation, something that works whether the market is at an all-time high or crashing through the floor.
That strategy is the title of the book, Just Keep Buying. It sounds almost too simple to be effective, right? We're conditioned to think that building wealth requires complex charts, insider tips, or predicting the next big crash. But Nick Maggiulli argues that the most effective strategy is actually relentless consistency. Think of it like a farmer planting seeds. A farmer doesn't wake up, check the weather report every single hour, and panic if it looks like it might rain in the afternoon. They don't refuse to plant their crops because the almanac predicts a storm 3 months from now. They plant because it's the season. They plant consistently, acre after acre, year after year, regardless of the daily weather fluctuations. That is exactly how Nick suggests we treat the stock market. You shouldn't buy because the market looks good. You should buy because you have the money to buy. Now, I know what you're thinking, but what if I buy right before a crash? What if I put my money in and the market tanks 50% the next day?
This is the fear that paralyzes most investors, but Nick has the data to prove why that fear is misplaced. He highlights a scenario, often called the world's worst market timer. Imagine a guy who has the absolute worst luck in history. He only buys stocks on the absolute worst days possible. He buys right before the crash of 1973. Then he saves up and buys again right before Black Monday in 1987. Then right before the dot-com bubble bursts in 2000. And finally, right before the Great Recession in 2007. He literally only buys at the absolute peaks. The result? Because he never sold, because he just held on to those assets, he still ended up a millionaire. He still ended up with roughly a 9% annualized return. That is the power of the mental model Nick is pushing here. Time in the market beats timing the market. In fact, Nick runs a simulation in the book called Even God Couldn't Beat Dollar Cost Averaging. He proves that even if you were omniscient, even if you were God and knew exactly when the bottom was, and you saved up your cash to buy only at those perfect low points, you would likely still underperform someone who just bought every single month without looking at the price.
Why? Because while God is sitting on the sidelines holding cash, waiting for the dip, the market is usually going up. The person who just keeps buying captures all that growth that the market timer misses. So the philosophy is to remove the decision-making entirely. Treat your investments like a bill that must be paid. Just keep buying. But there is a flip side to this. If we are aggressively buying assets and saving for the future, we run into a different problem. We start feeling guilty about spending money today. We become afraid to enjoy the wealth we're building because we feel like every dollar spent is a dollar wasted. How do we balance saving for tomorrow without being miserable today? Nick has a rule for that too. It's a mechanism designed to eliminate spending guilt entirely, allowing you to buy that expensive dinner or those nice shoes without feeling a shred of remorse. And it involves a simple equation.
Nick calls this mechanism the to-buy rule. It's deceptively simple, but it completely rewires how you look at a price tag. Here is how it works. Anytime you want to splurge on a material item, something that isn't a necessity, you have to take the same amount of cash and invest it in income-producing assets. So let's use that shoe example. Say you are walking past a shop window and you see a pair of incredible Italian leather shoes. They are $200. You want them. But usually you'd walk away feeling like you shouldn't spend the money. Under the to-buy rule, you are allowed to buy them, but only if you also take another $200 and immediately invest it in your brokerage account.
So those shoes didn't cost you $200. They effectively cost you $400. $200 for the luxury and $200 for your future self. This does two very powerful things. First, it acts as a brutal affordability check. If the thought of parting with $400 hurts too much, or if you literally don't have the cash to cover the double cost, then the answer is simple. You cannot afford the shoes. Walk away. But secondly, and this is the magic part, if you do buy them, the guilt vanishes. Why? Because you didn't just spend, you built wealth. You turned a moment of consumption into a moment of accumulation. Every time you treat yourself, you are also treating your future portfolio. You're no longer just a consumer, you're a capital allocator.
So, you've bought the shoes, and you've sent that matching $200 to your investment account. But now, you're staring at that buy button on your screen, and a new fear creeps in. You start thinking, okay, I have the cash, but the market is at an all-time high right now. What if I invest this money today and the market crashes tomorrow? Maybe I should wait for a better price. Maybe I should wait for a dip. Well, hold that thought, because it turns out that waiting for the perfect moment might be the most expensive mistake of all.
That feeling, that specific hesitation, that is the siren song of buying the dip. It sounds so responsible, doesn't it? It feels like you're outsmarting the system. You think, I'm not going to be the sucker who buys at the peak. I'll just hold my cash, wait for the market to drop 10 or 20%, and then I'll swoop in and get a bargain. It makes intuitive sense. Buy low, sell high. But Nick Maggiulli dedicates an entire section of the book to proving why this intuition is mathematically wrong. In fact, he calls it the buy the dip myth.
To prove it, he runs a fascinating thought experiment. He looks at historical market data going back to the 1920s and sets up a competition between two investors. The first investor is you. You're just a regular person. You invest $100 every single month, come rain or shine, all-time high or market crash. You don't look at the price, you just buy. The second investor is God. I'm serious. In this simulation, the second investor is omniscient. This investor looks at the chart and knows exactly when the market will hit absolute bottom between any two all-time highs. This investor saves up their cash, waits, and times the market perfectly. They never buy early, they never miss the bottom by even a day. They buy at the mathematical lowest point possible.
Now, who wins? If you run this simulation over 40-year periods throughout history, God loses. Actually, let me be specific. The regular person, the one who just bought every month without thinking, beats the perfect market timer more than 70% of the time. How is that even possible? How can perfect timing lose to average timing? It comes down to the cost of waiting. You see, while the buy-the-dip investor is sitting in cash, waiting for that perfect crash, the market isn't standing still. Historically, the market goes up much more often than it goes down. So imagine you start waiting today. The market climbs and climbs and climbs. Maybe it goes up 50% over the next 3 years. Then, finally, the crash comes. The market drops 20%. You feel like a genius. You buy in. But here is the problem. That crashed price, it is still 30% higher than the price was when you started waiting 3 years ago. You bought the dip, but you missed the growth.
Maggiulli uses a brilliant visual metaphor for this. Imagine the stock market is a train, and you are standing on the platform. The train starts moving. You think, I'm not going to jump on now. It's moving too fast. I'll wait for it to back up. But the train doesn't back up. It keeps chugging forward, picking up speed, moving to the next town. Eventually, the train does slow down. It might even reverse a little bit. But by the time it does, it is 3 towns over. You are running to catch up to a train that has effectively left the station for good. So, if you can't time the market, and even God couldn't beat a simple monthly contribution, then the stress of watching the charts is literally worthless. It's not just stressful, it's expensive. Which leads us to the final piece of the puzzle. If we know the math works, and we know that spending requires investing, and we know that timing the market is a fool's errand, why is it still so hard to actually do it? Why do we still hesitate? Well, it turns out the problem isn't the market. The problem is us. And the solution is to remove us from the equation entirely.
By automating it. See, if you have to manually log into your brokerage account every month, look at the price and click buy, you are giving your brain a chance to freak out. You are giving fear a seat at the table. But if that money leaves your checking account the day your paycheck hits, before you even see it, you remove the fear. You remove the hesitation. You remove you. And that brings us to the real secret sauce of Nick Maggiulli's work. Once you have that system running, once the buying is happening in the background, what do you do with all that freed up mental energy? Do you obsess over picking the next winning stock? Do you stare at CNBC all day? No, you get back to work. One of the most powerful charts in the book shows that for most people, especially if you're early in your journey, your savings rate is far more important than your investment returns. Maggiulli puts it bluntly, your career is your most valuable financial asset.
Think about it. If you have $10,000 invested and you spend hours trying to get a 10% return instead of an 8% return, you've made an extra $200. Congratulations. You could have made that driving Uber for a weekend. But if you focus that energy on leveling up your skills, negotiating a raise, or starting a side business, you could double your ability to save. And that is the fuel that makes the compounding engine actually work. It shifts the focus from how do I beat the market to how do I get more money into the market. And then you wait.
And this is the part nobody likes to talk about because it's not sexy. Real wealth building is boring. It's not a slot machine. It's an oak tree. You plant the seed, and for a long time it looks like nothing is happening. You water it. You wait. You come back a year later. It's just a twig.
It's tempting to dig it up and move it to a better spot. It's tempting to yell at it. But if you just leave it alone, if you just keep watering it, eventually you look up and you're standing in the shade. That is what Just Keep Buying is really about. It's about having the humility to admit we can't predict the future and the confidence to bet on it anyway. So, stop overthinking the dip. Stop stressing about the crash. Set up your transfers, focus on your income, and let time do the heavy lifting. That is where we'll wrap up our deep dive into Just Keep Buying. If you want to see the actual data, the charts that prove why buying the dip is a losing game and why timing is a myth, you really need to pick up the book. There's a link in the show notes to grab a copy. It is well worth the read just for the visuals alone. And if you enjoyed this and you want more insights like this delivered straight to you, make sure you are subscribed to The Last Read. We'll catch you in the next one.